We're back. What's up, Farron?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm good. Welcome in, everybody, to our second episode of Beyond 2D. Super excited to be here with you guys tonight. I'm your host, Jessica Dugas, and my other host, looking fabulous over there, retired Army First Class, Farron Dozier.
I'm good. Thank you. Hope everybody's doing good this afternoon or evening, depending on where you're located at.
We're somewhere in the world,
somewhere.
Wherever you are, somewhere over the rainbow. We're going to go down over the rainbow, down a rabbit hole tonight. We started our conversation about communication last episode 2 weeks ago. And we talked about the definition of communication. We talked about how it's really about imparting your thoughts with someone else. And creating an understanding. We talked about a lot of different things that episode. We talked about emojis.
Yeah.
We talked about facial expressions. We talked about the importance of tone and intention in communication. And I think some of that's going to come into play tonight as well. And I think what we're talking about too, pre-communication last week, like sort of maybe we don't start the communication fast enough, or at the right time, like as far as, we decide we want to communicate when we're 2 months into an issue,
Right.
So tonight we're going to talk about responsibility in communication. Whose responsibility is it? I got a couple different questions floating around, but I think this is going to get into some of why we choose not to communicate as humans, because responsibility is a big word. How do you feel about that word?
It used to show up for me as blame or fault. And so until I, did this education, this work, and self-examined it, I realized it is all on me.
Yeah. Responsibility is a big word. That I went to go look it up. So we're going to talk about that in a minute as well. But I want to start by asking the audience a question, because I see a couple people tuning in. I want to say hi, Miss Brittany, always in the front row. We love you, Miss Brittany. Also, Miss Juju's here this evening. Good to see you. Let us know if you're here and you're watching. I see some of y'all hiding out there. Say hello. Let us know what's going on, where you're joining from. I'll start off with a question for those of you watching. Whose responsibility is it to initiate communication? Picture it in your head, okay? There's something going on that's not quite right. Whose responsibility is it to initiate that conversation first? Whose responsibility is it to get that ball rolling? I'm gonna throw that out to you guys. Well, and I know some of y'all are gonna come back with the whole, well, it depends on the situation.
Right? Exactly.
Okay. Which I get, but I'm talking about in general. I'm looking for a specific answer here, and we'll just leave it at that.
We'll see if it shows up. We'll see if that answer shows up.
Yeah, we'll see if it shows up. But I wanted to start with this definition and see how you feel about this. First of all, dictionary.com is back to its normal crap here. Responsibility is the state of fact or being responsible. Okay, so you got to know what responsible is in order to take responsibility, right? But I like this part because I think it touches on what I was saying of why we sometimes choose not to communicate as humans. It is answerable and accountable for something within one's power, control, or management. Who is the only one that we can truly control?
Only myself?
Yes.
But I want to control you.
I know. And that's the problem here, is because we talked about this last week, right? We talked about, us being the fabulous egotistical humans that we are. We want to have all the control over the situation, which situations involve other people. So that means even subconsciously, we want to control over people. That makes us feel good.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Because we like to help.
Yeah.
We do. We truly like to help others.
Yeah.
But it doesn't always work that way.
It doesn't always work that way. It's at all.
So with responsibility, one of the things that I learned over the last 4 years is if you even break down responsibility as response-able, like who's responsible? You are response-able. That means you have the ability to respond. Right? So, but in this definition, the thing that sticks out to me is fact of being responsible. So being, right? And for me, we're human beings, not human doings. So
yes,
you said we got to break down the definition of responsibility even a little bit more, because it's a fact of a way to be. So you be responsible, right? So you don't just do it and think it's going to just be there. And when you want it to show up next time, it's already, no, you've got to be responsible in communication, right? So, and then you say accountable. Definitely another word that probably gonna have to drill down in the future. And then of course power, control, or management. So those are so vague.
Yeah, they're vague. And so I wanted to take the first part when it talks about the state or fact of being responsible. So I don't think we can have responsibility if we don't know what it means to be responsible. Like you said, being. So there were three there, dictionary likes to give you 20 definitions.
Yeah, for sure.
There were three that stood out for me, and I'm going to share them with you.
Okay.
Responsible is having a capacity for moral decisions and therefore accountable. There's that word accountable again, right? That moral's another fun word.
Yeah, another one.
Next one is responsible is involving accountability. Here we go. Or responsibility, as in having the power to control or manage. There's that control word again, right?
Yep.
Now, here's another one. Responsible is reliable or dependable, as in meeting debts, conducting business dealings, etc. So, do you want to do business with someone who's not responsible, who doesn't take responsibility?
Oh,
probably not.
Probably not.
So why then do we give a pass? Because we kind of talked about this a little bit last week too. To our friends and family and loved ones, why do we give a pass and allow irresponsibility to happen, or not being true to our word, or not being accountable to happen? Why do we allow that to go on? Why do we allow ourselves to do it?
I don't know. Next question.
Nope, you're not getting out of this one.
Okay. Could you repeat the question, please?
Why? Okay, so we talk about that other meaning, right?
This is tough. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think about this as like, I would never intentionally do business with someone who didn't know how to take responsibility for their actions, their dealings, because I don't want whatever happens in my business to all fall back on me, right? Yeah. I like people because I think for me, I'm going to speak just for myself. I tend to take things on anyway. I have a habit of taking the fall when it's not my fault. And then I'll beat myself up for it afterwards. So, and it's come from situations where I've been involved with people who couldn't take responsibility. And even going back as far as like middle school, right? Yeah. They put you in a group. Anybody still have PTSD from group projects? Anyone out there? How many? Let me know in the group project. Did your groups work together Or was there always that one person who had to do the work for everybody because people didn't want to take responsibility for their portion?
Mm-hmm.
Right. And so that's come into my adult life, where now my automatic response is to take responsibility, even if it's not my fault, without letting them be responsible for themselves.
So my level of responsibility came from an 8-year-old child. So you're talking about going way back, right? And so when I realized that I had to be responsible for that key on that string, right, to get in the apartment after school, right, that latchkey kid era, that being responsible became like a badge of honor. Like I was proud I was responsible. But like you said, then you take on all this weight, right, and to try to live up that level of responsibility, to the point where when I joined the military, one of the jobs that I took on was being a supply sergeant. Now, who is the most responsible person in the unit, in the military unit? Is a supply sergeant. Why? Because he's responsible for the paperclip to the tank.
Right.
Right? I had to be accountable for from paper clips to tanks. And I was good at it. But the weight that came with that, and the and how I was perceived, I mean, oh, what's wrong with you? He's arrogant. No, you got to sign this. You want to borrow a screwdriver? You got to sign the document. So it also gives off this this way of being that could also interpret other people to be like, you got an attitude, or you're arrogant, or whatever.
Controlling,
right? So all of that was their experience of me, but I walked away with, I'm responsible for all this. So it wasn't until a few years ago where I realized being responsible wasn't always a good thing.
Right.
Because then I would take on projects. I would give my word to stuff that I really didn't want to be a part of, that I really didn't want to care for. But because I felt responsible enough to handle it, then I found myself not being committed, but I was responsible. And so I had to learn the difference between those two, because to me, they felt the same. Being committed to something and then being responsible to something. And so once I separated those two, I actually let a lot of projects go because I was responsible, but I wasn't committed.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. And so that's how I had to go down my rabbit hole to figure out what responsibility, not just what it looked like, but what it felt like to me. Right. And once I was free from that, then I was like, okay, cool. I'm definitely a responsible guy. And sometimes it still gets in the way, but I recognize how I feel about it, and to know that it's not about a blame or fault.
Right.
So I don't have to be responsible for everything that happens around me if I truly, understand where my point of view is and where I stand in that conversation, or if I stand in that, that project.
Yeah.
And be able to voice that I'm not going to be responsible for it too, right? So now you're going back to communication and being responsible for your part, your actions, your integrity. Like it's connected to so much of our experience of ourselves.
Right.
If I can say it that way.
I love how you're sharing this, though, because I'm hearing that there is a difference between being responsible and taking responsibility, because you choose that taking responsibility part. You choose whether or not you're taking that on. Some of us, as we've already been figuring out, take on more than we probably should. And it does. I can see for myself how that has, I'm positive of it, come across as arrogant, controlling, type A, because I have picked up the slack so many times and taken that responsibility when I shouldn't have, that now it's like, well, I'm just going to go ahead and take responsibility from the get-go because I'm expecting that hurt to happen.
Yes, exactly. There you go. Yeah. You're avoiding that negative experience.
Yeah.
And or disappointment or whatever that is. Right. And so you just take it on, and then it's like, what's wrong with you? Like, you want to control everything all of a sudden? Like, like, is failure connected to that? Like, what's connected to that responsibility as well? Yeah. So it's so deep and ingrained in our behavior. That's why I like the definition about the being part.
Yeah.
It's connected to who we be, not just the stuff that we do in life.
Right. I want to get to a couple of our comments really quick, from Juju in particular, and then I'm sitting here with like 5 rabbit holes in front of me. Like, which direction should we go? But Juju said we allow it out of fear of being rejected or ignored when we were talking about why we allow it in more familiar relationships as opposed to business. So that's a great point, Juju. She said the accountability part of responsibility is getting to know what part you play in the relationship or situation as well. So that's that, I can still be a responsible person and not have to take responsibility for this. It doesn't, like, I think some of us are afraid of getting that I am a responsible person badge taken away. Right?
If it's part of your identity, if it's part of your even a part of your moral compass. Right. Because there's a feeling that comes with being responsible, negative and positive.
Who would want to have someone describe them as irresponsible? I don't know anybody that would. I mean, when we get into that part about identity, and I am sure that no matter what we're talking about on the show, that eventually that portion of identity is going to come up, because I know for me, I absolutely lean into certain qualities, certain moral compass, if you will, to be part of who I am. And I will get offended like that if you question that moral compass, because I know where I'm coming from. Damn it. It's a big deal for me. Yeah. But again, that's me choosing to get all upset and not trusting that I know I am a responsible person. Right. I'm letting somebody else dictate that now. Juju said, exactly, that's choosing accountability for what you desire in your life. You said something, Farron, committed versus responsible.
Oh, yeah.
I asked a question this week in our Breakthrough Show Network Discord community. I said, because somebody, Brian K. Wright, shout out to him, Breakthrough alumni, said there's a difference between being interested in something and being committed to it. Now we can also say there's a difference between being interested, committed, and responsible. We can add that third part there. And I asked in the group, I said, think of the things you're involved in your life. How many of those things are you actually committed to? And how many are you just interested in? And does the time that you're spending on each of those things correspond appropriately to the interested versus committed? Now we add in this responsibility part, and
yeah. I mean, my name is all over it. Just by you saying it that way, I looked at some things that I've taken on recently, like why am I really engaged in this? Yep. Why am I really taking that on? Yeah. And now I have to rethink some processes. Right. Yeah. So
I mean, look, I think that you hit the nail on the head when it's about being, because the act of being is a moment to moment choice. It's a continual work in progress. That's why I get all the way up on 3 soapboxes when people talk about some sort of arrival in the spiritual and personal development communities, because there is no arrival. My daughter was sitting at the table earlier going like, I can't wait till I'm done with school. I'm like, how do you think you're ever done learning? You think you're ever done learning?
That's just one phase of it.
Yeah. Yep. And the thing of it is we're kind of fooled, I think, because we're like, well, I want to finish with school because I don't like people telling me what I have to learn, right? But in a sense, we're still kind of being dictated that as we get older in a little bit, because society, our friends, the things that happen around us do have an impact on what we choose to learn. Now, we'll say I'm choosing to learn this, but if you weren't influenced by those around you, you wouldn't probably want to learn those things.
I want to go back to something that you said, because I don't think we can dance over it, because it's the other side of being responsible.
Yeah.
That comes with emotional situations or traumas or whatever, which is being irresponsible. Right. And I'm sure we've all experienced someone telling us you're irresponsible, or in some definition of that context. Right. So then how do you manage the emotional part of that being irresponsible?
Right.
And making the corrections. Right. Because sometimes when those emotional traumas happen, you become another way to survive that episode. But you're still avoiding the irresponsibility piece. So you're always focused on not being irresponsible to be responsible. So you're not even aware of what's going on, like right now in real time, because I'm always paying attention to, am I being responsible right now? Because what's in the background of my thought process is I'm irresponsible. So the more that I focus on being irresponsible or not being irresponsible, the more it probably shows up.
Right.
In the stuff that you're up to. So I wanted to touch on, before we go to this break in about 8 minutes or so, is what are the things that causes us to experience emotionally the irresponsible stuff, right? And I'll put it like this. Sometimes conversations about right or wrong could thwart the ability to communicate. Right. So I'm gonna go like another layer down to communication, be responsible. Right. So if I have an issue with being right or wrong, and I'm emotionally attached to that conversation, and I want to be right, or I want to make you wrong, how am I going to be communicating with you?
Right.
How's my behavior going to be? How's my being going to be? We got right or wrong, good or bad. I win, you lose. They have all these different opinions. So now we're going to talk about being responsible about our opinion about stuff in communication. So all these different, opinions, things that we have in our belief systems and how we think about life could be in the way of us having a clear communication, and even then being responsible for my communication, because then I'm right, you're wrong. And then there's no space for you to share your rights and wrongs because I'm right. Yeah. And so then how do I want to communicate with you? Why would I want to communicate with you? So the irresponsible part of that, I say, is just as important as understanding your responsibilities in communication.
Right.
Because now it's like you got to find out what your weaknesses are in communication. Like what are your weaknesses? And are you willing to own the weakness so you can get developed in that weakness so you can become a better communicator? Which you say you'll never stop learning if you're really willing to do the work within yourself and try to figure out what does communication mean to me and what doesn't it mean to me.
Yeah.
And I believe if you get to that understanding about yourself, when conversations come up, you can communicate the irresponsibility part of it. Right? You can articulate the irresponsibility just as much as you can be effective as being responsible for your communication.
Right.
And so I believe all that, for me, it was also connected to my emotional state.
Yeah.
My emotional intelligence, my emotional awareness.
Right.
And I believe that's what a lot of people are pointing to today as men. You need to get in touch with your feelings and your femininity. Well, it's not being about femininity stuff. It's about being able to articulate your emotions. Right. It's about being able to communicate how you feel as effectively as possible.
Right.
But if I've got irresponsibility mixed in with my responsibility as who I am as a person, then how am I going to act with you when it's time to really have a serious conversation with you?
Right.
It's going to be hard for me to communicate that.
Yeah. I mean, that there is that when you get into taking on those things that we talked about as part of your identity, then there's going to be emotion attached to it in some kind of way. And you have to learn how to sort of separate that out a little bit, I guess.
It's tough.
Yeah. I think where I want to go after the break is my other friend, in addition to dictionary.com, is thesaurus.com.
Oh, we gonna go there.
We're gonna go there because I really believe. See, I'm fascinated by words, and I'm also fascinated by our subconscious and how much lives there, and we don't even know it. And stuff comes out, and we're like, "Where did that come from?" Well, that, boys and girls, is your subconscious. And I think that there are, like we talked about last week with just the definition of communication, there are so many personal, not dictionary definitions, but personal definitions and experiences with it, that now we have all of these running in our subconscious. Even if it's not our personal definition, it's all running back there because we've seen it in other people. So I want to go down that rabbit hole next. We're going to take a little break, and we're going to be right back after this.
I can breathe.
Hey, what's up, man? How you doing?
I'm blessed, my brother. How you doing?
I'm good, man. I'm good. Hey, did you see the game last night?
Oh, that was a good game.
But did you see the shot?
I lost money from that shot.
Oh, man, that shot was cold,
I
man.
hated it, but it was good. Damn. What's in those jeans?
You really want to know?
I do.
Exhaustion, muscle spasms, asthmatic issues, unexpected sickle cell trait crises.
Damn. Are you serious? When I was young, I found out I had sickle cell trait. My mom's told me, but I ain't have no knowledge of it. But when I got older, I had a child, and the doctor told me my daughter has sickle cell trait. Do you know the facts that both parents have sickle cell trait? There's a 50% chance the child may have the trait, and 25% chance the child may have the disease.
Hey, that's what's the count. Do you know that 2.5 million people in the United States have sickle cell trait, 300 million people globally? I didn't find out I had sickle cell trait until I was in the Army, 10 years. Next thing you know, I had a sickle cell trait exertion site.
Sickle cell? I thought that was a black gene or something.
Nah, man, the Latin community is number 2. 1 out of 36,000 babies are being born with sickle cell disease. You could be Caucasian, Mediterranean, European. You gotta know your bloodline, man.
There is an inherited gene in our community that has been forgotten. The name is sickle cell trait. WDCONSCT, also known as What's the Count, is out to bring awareness, education, and prevention to people all over the globe. Want more information? Call us now at 323-215-5384 or visit www.wdconsct.org.
Welcome back to episode 2 of Beyond 2D with your hosts, Jessica Dugas and the other D, Farron Dozier.
What it do? What it do?
So I don't know if either one of us are ready for this, but we're about to
that's why we're here.
We're about to have a good time.
That's why we're here.
Okay. So thesaurus.com. The most relevant synonyms for responsibility are authority, burden, duty, guilt, importance, liability, obligation, power, restraint, and trust.
Oh my goodness.
These are some big, hard words.
No wonder we have problems.
No wonder, because if you think so, at first look, I kind of had the same reaction for you. I'm like, what do you mean that's what responsibility means? I'm like, no, this is too much. But there have been times when I have felt that guilt, burden, and duty when it comes to responsibility. There have been times when I have neglected my responsibility and felt that liability, that distrust, lack of power, and when I drop the ball, when I have dropped the ball on my own responsibility before, I have felt unimportant. I have felt like a burden, and so there are all of these different big emotions that I realized in thinking about it that I have felt before, that on the surface, I'm not necessarily associating with communication, but because those emotions have come up regarding responsibility and communication before, I'm sure that's going on back here in my subconscious.
I mean, I don't like thesaurus.com at all.
It's not your friend. It's
no,
my friend.
It's your friend. Not my, I don't even.
It helps me. It shoves me into the rabbit hole, even if I was thinking about going down anyway.
If when you look at all those words on that, how emotional charged they are.
Yeah.
Like that's all emotion.
Yeah. Well, for us, it is. There's some people that could be looking. Does anybody see any of those words that don't feel emotionally charged them? Because I know that some people are just different. They just are, we all process words in different ways. That's why we have a resource like thesaurus.com, because if you are okay with the word authority, but you're not okay with the word guilt, then now I know which word to use with you.
Now that's the only good thing about it. Because in learning personal development courses that I've taken, all this is in words. It's in language. Everything is in language. So sometimes we have to find words that give us power, because there are some words that take us down that negative experience of ourselves. So yes, so I agree with you on the thesaurus.com piece of that. Yeah, that you got to find the words, and that's why communication is so important. You got to find the words that best describe how you feel and what you want to say, versus what my environment taught me of what that word means and how I feel about it. But then I'm an adult now. I may not feel the same about being vulnerable anymore, how I felt as a child, or that word may not give me power as a child. So now as an adult, I have to be at some level of have vulnerability as an adult, even though I don't like how that word makes me feel. So then now you've got to find words that give you your strength, that give you your power, that give you your boldness, which is important in communication.
So if you think of then responsibility in communication, whose responsibility is it to initiate communication? Going back to that first question that I asked, the answer that I wanted to see from everybody is it's my responsibility, like meaning yours in your situation, because you're the only one you can control. And we talked about the element of control when it comes to responsibility. But looking at this helped me understand why people might not initiate communication. Because if they feel like by communicating with you, they are going to be a burden on you.
That's number one.
If they feel like by communicating with you, they're going to be guilty. If they feel like by communicating with you, they are now under some kind of obligation. These are all things that I feel like can stop someone from communicating.
Power. I'm giving my power away if I'm the first one to bring this conversation up. Like trust. Yeah. Like and so in my sickle cell community, as you saw the PSA, in my sickle cell community, sometimes when I interview people living with the disease, they feel like they're a burden on their family. Right. To ask for help to go to the hospital, or can you come visit me, or like whatever that is. That and that burden experience happens as a child, that they grew up like nobody supports me, nobody cares about me, but because in the background is if I ask for help, I'm gonna be a burden on my family. Yeah. And can you imagine living like that as you're a burden on your family?
I can.
The most important people in your circle, supposed to be. And you walk around and feel like, and then you communicate it like to yourself that I'm a burden. Yeah. Like no wonder. Yeah.
When I started kind of going down the rabbit hole of my own health challenges back in 2017, that's a huge part of why a lot of times I simply don't share what I'm going through health wise, because and on one hand, it's like, it's good to know that I have people that love me and that would be willing to help. But on the other hand, it's like, I can already feel that the weight of the burden that I'm putting on them. I keep a lot to myself. I live like that literally every day, saying, should I should I communicate and should I not? I have to, but it's that being, it's that, weighing that in my mind. And then there's also the, communicating, you're talking about so many different things here. The trust part, Juju was talking about, I'm learning to work with the word trust. I think raise your hand if you're not working with
I don't even care about trust. That's how much I don't like it. I don't even care about it. Like, please, trust, whatever.
Yeah. Brittany was saying she often feels that same burden as well. She's working on it though. And that's the thing, is like, I think with any of this, we have to choose whether we want to work on that communication piece or we don't. And I for like, this may not be a go-to for everybody, but for me, I always go back to, if I really care about, if I care about the people in my life as much as I say I do, then don't I want to effectively communicate with them? Don't I want to know which one of these words are a trigger for them? Don't I want to know how we can communicate better?
Not naturally.
I think sometimes, I think it depends, but I think, because sometimes it comes naturally to me and sometimes it does not. Sometimes I have to stop and say, to me, it's like, it's an action speaks louder than words.
Yeah, that whole cliche. The part about obligation, right?
Yeah.
The obligation for me stands out because, especially when you talk about your family now, that love for our family comes with obligation already. So you might feel obligated to communicate with your family, but if there's disappointment and upset and frustration mixed in with the obligation, you're not going to say anything.
Right.
Which one's going to win in your mind? Right. And so that one day when you have the confidence or the courage to speak up because you feel like you're right about your conversation, then you'll speak up because you're right. But then again, just because you think that you're right, what is the other person on the other side of that conversation? What if they feel like they're right and they've been waiting for you to say something? So now you're both arguing back and forth about who's right and who's wrong.
Right.
So that obligation piece, like I said, that all of that right there is important for outside conversation. But I want to spin it one more time back to how do we communicate with ourselves first? And as you said, that subconscious mind has all these experiences stored in the background, running off of it, waiting for that opportunity to speak out and blur out whatever we want to say, negative or positive. But how are we communicating with ourselves first? Through these conversations to ourselves. And a lot of times I would imagine it's not a healthy conversation to myself.
Right.
So then how would it be a healthy conversation outside when I open my mouth with all that stuff going on in the background?
Yeah.
So I'm saying, communication with yourself, as we talk about this and we listen and we, go down these rabbit holes, don't go down a rabbit hole about your family member. Go down a rabbit hole about yourself first. And the more you understand about yourself, and if all these things affect you emotionally, upset or excites you, imagine that your family member or your friend or your loved ones is dealing with the same thing. So I'm saying, when you self-examine, self-reflect, and see all of your negative and positives, and you own it and you recognize it, in my communication, I'm gonna speak to you with a little bit of more compassion.
Right.
I would say when you really get to the root of it, right, and you really get to where your thought process is coming from and why do you think like that, and why is your opinions about communication, your opinions about that subject that you're dealing with that loved one, what are you saying to yourself first? And I believe if we can catch that part of the communication first, then what comes out of our mouth will be, the experience of that communication will be more harmonious, if I could say it that way.
Yeah. I mean, look, no matter what we talk about on this show, it's going to come down to our self-worth, our self-love, how we are communicating with ourselves. Those little like things live in our subconscious automatically, but what are we allowing to take priority in our consciousness, in our our outside life? One of the things that I really wanted to touch on tonight was about responsibility when it comes to setting up conversations. And what I mean by that is, you and I have had a conversation before about say we are having a bad day and we need to vent about it, and we go to our friend and we say, I am having a bad day, blah, 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 blah. Okay. And the friend then is a helper friend. Some of us are helper friends. The friend is a helper friend, and the friend is like, immediately goes into, in their mind, what can I do to help, and starts giving advice. And now you're mad because you just wanted to vent, and here's this person telling you what you should do with your life. So now you're mad about it, and you say it, and now they're mad at you because they're like, I'm just trying to help. So we need to talk about responsibility in setting up our communication, our conversations a little bit better. So going into saying something like, listen, Farron, I've had a really bad day. I just need to vent. Or I've had a really bad day, Farron, and I would really like your advice. Setting up what it is you're looking for in the conversation, because then if it's outside of what you asked, it's easier to go, I appreciate that, but I just wanted to vent. I told you I just wanted to let it out. Or, I appreciate you listening. What can you offer me? You can then navigate the communication a little bit easier than going, I didn't tell you to tell me that.
I agree. It's the context.
Yeah.
If I'm going to initiate a conversation, it's up to me, my responsibility, to voice the context and what I'm about to say to you and what I'm expecting from you. But it doesn't. I don't think that comes naturally.
I don't think it does either.
Right, and I don't think I don't remember being taught that growing up either. Like when you have a conversation, you initiate it. This is how you frame this conversation. There's a way that you can frame it so that it's harmonious, that people are listening for, we're listening to you now. And so, but I didn't learn that till early 40s, that I could actually have a context for a conversation,
right,
and have it be guided within these parameters of what we're talking about. So like you said, if I create this conversation for a venting process, then you're not going to coach me.
Right.
You're not going to give advice to me. You can ask me questions, but you can't give advice because I've already set the tone that this is what I want from you in this communication.
So the same answer applies to who sets the tone for the conversation as whose responsibility is it to initiate communication, and that's you.
Yeah, it's you. And even if it's a disagreement with the other person, I could still set the tone for my conversation to engage that person. Now, if you want to make it about something you want to talk about, then after we're done here, then you can design your conversation and we can talk about that subject. But what we do is we just go at it, and then now we're bringing up 10 years ago. Now we're bringing up, what you might do to me later on. And so there is the miscommunication. There's all of that happens in that dynamic.
Now, what if we're in the middle of the conversation and I told you, Farron, I just want to vent. I just need to get it off my chest where I'm going. And you feel like I know something that could really help her right now, but she told me she just wanted. How do you then, if we're talking about creating harmonious conversation here, communication, how do you then respectfully open that door?
And again, this is stuff that I learned. Yeah. I learned that in certain conversations you have to ask permission to speak into someone's life. Right? Like that's a principle, like that's a rule. And so do I catch myself butting in? Blah, blah, blah? Yeah, I do. But then there's sometimes I catch myself like, hey, do you want a response to that? Like you ask the question, like in your questions, you're listening. You have to be, hey, is it okay if I speak to that? No, okay, cool. But you have to ask permission, and I believe that's why so many misunderstandings and upsets, and people walk away mad with one another, because sometimes people don't want you speaking into their life.
Right.
And so the courteous thing in communication is to ask permission.
Yeah.
But it takes confidence, courage, like it takes a way of being in communication to be responsible for this conversation we're having, where I might have to give up my power. I might have to give up being correct. Like I might have to give up something so that you have the space to be free from what you're dealing with. And is that a loss of power to me? No, I'm actually your sounding board so that you can be free from your whatever you're dealing with. Yeah. And I might have to lessen myself as a person for that space to happen.
Yeah. All I'm going to say is this: the chat went completely silent when we started talking about this, and I really want to know, and be honest here, you guys, because I'm the first one to tell you, as far as creating harmonious communication in the relationships in my life, I am absolutely a work in progress. Like, and I don't know that there's a rival. It's that every time I am in a conversation, I am making some kind of attempt to shift what my brain is doing and my mouth are doing two different things here. And so let me know if this is something, are you actively attempting to have harmonious communication in the relationships in your life? What we've been talking about, setting up the conversation for what you expect to happen in the communication. Are you interjecting, appropriately, kindly, things like that. And then I want to, because I feel like, I don't know, do you feel like there's sort of etiquette at all with communicating online with people? Like communicating via text and things like that?
That part for me is a very fine line, because if you and I have been communicating and we're in a disagreement, and then I'm texting you, you're reading that text message
right
in the broken communication context. So I could type no, and if we've got a negative thing in there in communication, that no is going to be like explosive. Right. So I have to be aware in my typings and choice of words again, how I type and how I text and the context. Even you can still create that context in a text message, but it's still dangerous grounds. It's because, again, how that person is what voice that person is using to portray your voice in their head. If it's the attitude voice, is it the harmonious voice? Is it the stubborn voice that they're reading your words? You don't know how those words are going to land on the other person's phone,
right,
or screen. Like, you have no control unless you type something to set the tone, and see if they're even going to engage with you. But we use text messages now for like deep conversations, and that's not a good space for that.
Yeah, it's a recipe for disaster, because I have been, even recently, in conversations where I can, and it's hard for me as more of an empath, I guess, because I have always been very gifted with reading energy without reading words. It just is what it is. I've always been that way. And so there's feelings that exist, and whether anybody wants to believe that or not, we are energy. We are made of energy. When we feel a certain way, those feelings have energy as well. And there are people that can pick up on that. And so, why are you banging your head at me?
Because we're gonna have to go down that rabbit hole.
We will go down. We will absolutely go down that rabbit hole one day. But my point of this is that a lot of times, things are said online, and it's well, there's, like we talked about in week 1, tone can be important in a conversation. Mm-hmm. And there's a lot of people who were not have not ever been trained and don't understand with how their tone is missing from their typing, or how they're coming across in their typing. And they'll be the first to go, well, I didn't mean it like that. But I'm like, that's not
that's not what I read on my screen.
That's not what I just read right now. Thank you very much. And so it's very, very challenging, because like you said, we're having these deeper conversations now via text. The very reason why I chose for the Breakthrough Show Network to have their shows on video format is because we can see each other's faces.
Exactly.
Because we're not just listening to tone of voice, we are seeing the emotion come across the screen a lot of times. Yeah. You are seeing the relationships being acted out on the screen. I had instances in season 1 of the original, the Breakthrough Show, that I hadn't learned boundaries yet. And I had people on the show that I was not comfortable with. Mm-hmm. And you could tell a mile away that something was not, I mean, it wasn't bad.
Yeah.
But you could tell something wasn't quite right. Like something was not harmonious there. Something was not harmonious there.
I just believe, with so many opinions, right? We see the definitions. With so many opinions in the background, with so many worries in the background, we pretend in the background like everything is okay. Mm. Like with all that going on internally, how can you have a honest conversation unless you deal with yourself? Because even in communication, and I'm talking and I say something and you make a face, right? Mm-hmm. My first inclination is it's about me. Mm. It's about me. What did I say? What was that for? What that for?
Well, but it's like when I just was talking about the energy, the energy and all of that, and you're banging your head on your microphone, and I'm over here like, what did I say? What did I do wrong? What the hell's wrong with you?
Because I don't understand that conversation, right, when people say energy, mm-hmm. right? And so it wasn't about you. It was right. It went to my internal. That's what I'm saying. It went to my right. internal, yep. right? But it's easy for us when we're communicating with people and we want to check their body language and check how they flicker their eyes. Like, yeah, those are important. But are you making that mean something about you?
Right.
When it happens.
Yeah.
And that's one of the things that when I do my talk show is very effective, because I'll see all of that going on in my guests and I'll say, what does that mean? Why did you make that smirk? Not about Farron.
Right.
But why did you make
that smirk? It couldn't ever be Farron. Let's get that clear.
Yeah, not about. But this is the catch. If the body language is about you, yeah. the person will tell you.
Yeah.
But see, if I go in communication with you and I already think it's about me, then I'm going to be defensive with what you say to me.
Right.
Right. So that's what I'm saying. We have to first in this rabbit hole, before you even go down the rabbit hole, is look at yourself first about your communication. What triggers you? What words trigger you? Because that's what you're going to be defensive with. So you're not even going to listen. The other part of communication, when you break it out, is the listening piece. That's going to come in our future conversation. We haven't even gone there. To be harmonious, is more listening than it is talking.
Yeah.
So I could take what you say, I could spin it and make it sound like wonderful. And right. you just curse me out. You just use words to insult me.
Uh-huh.
but I could take your words that you tried to insult me with and listen and spin it back to you, and you'd be like, oh, well, that's not what I meant. Yeah, I'm pretty sure that's not what you meant. But so what are you trying to say?
Right.
Because again, our words that we hide behind are descriptive. I'm giving you descriptive words.
Right.
So you don't catch how I really feel. Right.
Yeah.
So how can I be harmonious when you're giving me words that I'm struggling or I'm upset or, so all of that in communication, who's responsible? We are individually responsible for our own communication first.
Yeah.
We
Absolutely.
have to be. And without blame or fault. And there's a conversation to have so it doesn't come across to myself as if I communicate this to you, it's like I'm blaming myself, or even I'm blaming you. But it takes a particular kind of way of being in that responsibility.
Right.
That we have to find our power and our strength and our courage. I use courage, confidence, boldness, because those are strengths.
Yeah.
And so you might have to find a word that gives you your confidence. I told my daughter just the other day, maybe I'm using the word that you need confidence is not the word for you. So look up confidence and find a word that relates to being confident so you can use that word, because maybe
Thesaurus.com is your friend.
I'll text her and let her know.
Go ahead, because I bet you it'll be thanks, Miss Jessica. That's what it'll be afterwards. Okay, all right.
But that, to me, that's at the root of it all. As we start to have these conversations about communication, I'm asking you as a listener, and to myself even, I practice. I've got to check myself first. I've got to check how I communicate to myself, and then that'll give you an indication of what's coming out of your mouth. And sometimes it's just way out trash.
Yeah. Try to create harmonious conversations, but they don't always work out that way. And I think that's what we're saying, is to take the responsibility for your piece, your initiation, you're setting the tone for how you want the conversation to go. And you've got to release the expectation you have on the other person to respond in the communication the way that you want them to. And I think we're going to end up diving into that a little bit when we talk about listening next week. Listening and communication is our topic there in 2 weeks.
Can I give you an example of that real quick?
Yeah,
Because how was I going to say it? Oh, asking someone for support or some help and they say no. That no for some people will be like, I'm never going to ask them again.
Exactly. Yep.
Never gonna. But again, if you have to give that person the opportunity to say yes or no. Like, you can't ask a question and then you have to formulate your question differently to take away the no. But for a lot of times we ask someone for support or to do something for us and they say no, the expectation that I had on you hoping you say yes and you tell me no, it could be hurtful to me.
Yeah. But
really it's my level of expectation that I had on you for the yes. Because I really wanted the yes from you, but you said no. But I have to give you the space to say yes or no. Right. And be okay with that no if it comes to a no. But for me, it's uncomfortable to have a no.
And I think, look, there could be literally that no portion, both for in a personal way and in a business sense as well. That no portion can be such a huge thing, because if you think about it, and I don't want anybody to twist this. I know we're going to go a few minutes over here, guys, but I really feel like this is important. I don't want people to get this twisted that it's a bad thing, but from the time we were little, from the time we were born, we would go and do something or ask for something. And what would our parents say? No. I am as much, I have said no as much as any other parent out there. However, one of the things that I really like as a parent, and I try when I'm not being human, is the redirect. is just, no, we're not going to talk about no. It's going to be like, what else can we focus on instead? How can we make this a harmonious situation? Because I don't want, even Leah says to me the other day, she's like, you always tell me no. And so we're told that our whole childhood and growing up, and then we get older and we go to have a conversation with an adult, with our spouse. And we don't want to ask our spouse for something we want, because why? Because we already know we're going to be told no, even though we don't know that. It's just what our parents told us. That's a whole, you talk about just the process of growing up as such a huge impact on how we communicate with each other. It's insane.
It's getting expressed in our adult life now.
Right. Yeah.
So
absolutely. I have to shout out Angelique, because Angelique said my face speaks more and faster than my mouth can usually, and I'm working it. I think one of the biggest things that I wanted to say this to and I don't know if this has been the case for you, Farron, but doing a video show has been one of the quickest ways for me to fix my face, because I saw from the very beginning that sometimes my face will not express my truth, what I'm really experiencing in the moment, because I can be very emotive. However, I don't ever want my the way that I emote to be comfortable or uncomfortable for other people. So even when I've trained other hosts and things like that, I'll go watch a show and I'll be like, keep an eye on your face. Like, you got a beautiful face, but keep an eye, because sometimes it can be expressing something we don't mean to. Yeah. And
right away you might be in a conversation and what am I gonna have for dinner tonight? And it's on your face.
Yep. And look, I'm as like, sometimes I'll have, I'm trying to pull up the stream and I'm like this. And then I look like I'm not happy about what Farron's saying. Juju said, I'm here listening while cooking. Love your points of view and perspective. Got a lot to think about and work on within myself. Thank you for this, Jessica and Farron. We appreciate you being here. And like I said, next episode in 2 weeks. What is that? That is April 11th.
Yeah.
We are going to be talking about listening in communication, because we've talked a lot about the actual talking part, and the other half of communication is listening. And I think we may end up having a guest as well. And it's going to be a good one.
Yeah. I can't wait.
Yeah.
Thank you for today.
Thank you. And did you see what a great example of communication we were during the show? I said, Farron, what the hell do you mean banging your head on your microphone like that? What did I do wrong?
I don't understand energy. Help me understand what you mean.
We're going to go down another rabbit hole. That's what we're going to do. Listen, I'm so thankful for you, my friend. And I'm excited for continuing this conversation on communication, because that's all we can do is better ourselves. And then that's how we heal the world.
Michael Jackson. I can name that tune in 4 bars.
You win. You win. It's happening. Brittany appreciates. This was great. Angelique said, great show and conversation. We appreciate all of you being here, and feel free to continue the conversation in the comments. We will communicate with you. We'll try to leave our feelings out of it. And
nope.
Okay. Some of us.
I'm reacting to everything you say. What?
That's honesty. That's honesty right there. Thank you, Farron, for being here again this evening. It's always a pleasure. And we will be back in 2 weeks, you guys. We're going to finish with the love from my friend Dorothy Auger, and we'll see you in 2 weeks, April 11th.
2D.
More Beyond 2D. Bye.
I shall stand for love, even with a broken soul, even with a heavy heart. I shall stand for love, for the world is wounded, not just my little piece of land, where I am mostly safe, where I am mostly well, but our world, everywhere, every day. I shall stand for love, because we need more light, not more death, not more power, not more bombs. I shall stand for love, so that our children are safe, so that our friends are sheltered, so that our borders are open. I shall stand for love, even with a broken soul, even with a heavy heart.